Hello, everyone, and welcome in Vicenza. It's always wonderful to be here. I think Vicenza is one of the leading trade shows where actually sustainability is at the heart, and I think we need more of that. And today I'm very happy to talk about the critical role of nature in business resilience. And I have some really experts with me around the table. Allow me to introduce them. Alice Vanni, Corporate Social Responsibility Director of Italpreziosi. Welcome. We have Johanna Levy, Vice President of Environmental, Social and Governance Programs, GIA. And next to me, Buga Berković, Principal Consultant of the Biodiversity Consultancy, and absolutely an expert on nature. And Buga, if I may say so, since that we've been working with you, you've really, I think, made a very big difference also on me learning about the importance of nature. I think all of us will agree that nature is at a tipping point. What we see around the world, if it's not the fires, what's happening in California, if it's not rain, if it's not storms, everybody is affected. And on the 1st of August 2024, we reached the moment when global consumption of resources was greater than the Earth's capacity to regenerate resources in the year already. So we need 1.75 Earths to meet our consumption needs. I think it's a very scary thought. And we thought it's important today in Vicenza to inform and talk with the industry about how important it is that we as an industry are going to look at nature as part of our business strategy. If we think about diamonds polishing, of creating jewelry or watches, we'll see that many of the sources come from certain regions in the world. They will be manufactured in India or Africa. And that means there will be water usage, there will be land usage, there will be the urgent need to tackle how dependent you are on that. So today, we want to go a little bit more deep dive into nature with the Watch Jewellery Initiative 2030. And we also want to talk about education, action, and then accountability. And I think with setting the scene, it's important for those of you that are present here or online that do not know what the Watch Jewellery Initiative 2030 is about. Well, we were established only 3 years ago by Maison Cartier, delegated by Richemont, and also the Caring Group. And we ask companies to really commit to 3 core interconnected pillars: climate resilience, biodiversity, and nature and inclusiveness. And so today we're going to focus on the second pillar, biodiversity and nature. And Buga, allow me to start with you because you've been on this journey with us. And I think it would be great for the audiences online and present here, why is nature so important for the industry?
Thank you, Iris. I have to say it's also been a learning journey on my side. So I am a nature and biodiversity expert, but working with the sector for a couple of years. And there is a lot in this sector that we are still learning, but some things are very clear, very known already, and as all other sectors, watch and jewelry sector highly depends on nature and biodiversity. So biodiversity is only a component of nature. Water is also a component of nature, so is climate, so are minerals and metals that we mine. So this already gives a picture of where the industry depends on nature and what is the vulnerability of the industry, basically, on what nature is providing us. So beyond mining, impacts of mining, and for example, some of the mining operations may require a lot of water, either for digging or for transporting ores. Already when we start moving along the value chain, processing the ores or processing the stones will require energy. Some of the methodologies maybe or approaches to polish stones will also require water. And these things often happen in parts of the world where water is scarce, or mining operations, especially if we are talking about the ASM, may require timber to support mines and mine shafts. But again, they happen in arid areas where forests are really scarce. So on one hand, the industry and the value chain depends on nature to be able to do what it's doing, but on the other hand, it's also causing impact. So there is this very sensitive balance of taking what we need, but ensuring that the nature stays functioning so that we can keep doing our business and we can be more resilient. So a couple of years ago, when WJI started working on it, we were very happy to join and support the members.
And I think what is important, that for us it was also a very new topic when we looked at some of the leading brands, and I think I can acknowledge Kering, the Kering group there, who were so advanced. We realized sitting around the table, and for example also Cartier with nature experts, that this is a topic that is going to influence the industry tremendously in how they're going to have to do business. And we also will talk about the legislation. And this morning we had a fantastic panel co-organized also again by CIBJO on the importance of ESG and the regulations. Well, what you will see, and we'll talk about a bit later, is that this is a wake-up call, because also in the regulatory framework, you will need to really shape your nature journey. So what we want to tell you is what have we done till date and where are we? And maybe, Buga, you can talk a little bit about the approach. You know, how did we get our members to start the nature journey?
Thank you. So, slide that you may already see is showing probably the staple, most publicly known product or deliverable that the WJI made for its members, but also for general public, and that is a nature roadmap. This is a sector-level document where we aim to introduce what is nature, how it's relevant for businesses in general, and then in specific for watch and jewelry sector, and how businesses can tackle nature in their supply chain. So both dependencies and the impacts. This is exhaustive, detailed document, which can be used as a reference, but it's also high level in a way that it's talking about the sector. It's guidance for each of the companies. So what WJI did and is still doing is supporting companies, and through companies really moving the needle for the whole sector and then beyond, because intersecting with the watch and jewelry sector are also agricultural sector, because supply chains linked to leather are more agriculture-based, obviously. There is a mining sector, there is technology sector, which is producing all these tools which are being used to assemble watches and jewelry. So there is really a lot of cross-sectoral collaboration as well that needs to be put in place. So in this process, WJI started early on, already in 2023, releasing a nature primer, which was really first contact with nature. What is it? Why are we now starting to talk about it? And I think, Iris, you will agree that in the beginning, for a lot of members, this was really a big unknown.
Yeah, it was very challenging. We saw that. We also realized that, okay, first that we had to just educate, understand why it's important and why we are so dependent on nature specifically for our industry. And then we also realized that we would need a lot of help desk support and education, and that we did. I can tell you there are hundreds of hours of education took place within the initiative with specific help desk support. So it was not a free ride. Companies would go on a journey, would have to also action, and then would get help desk support. I think what is important is that the nature road map for the industry was developed in consultation with SBTN, WWF,
World Economic Forum, TNFD.
Everyone, key stakeholders, because we as an industry sometimes seem to work in our own silo, but we thought it was really critical to also work multi-stakeholder, what we've done.
Exactly. And then the feedback on the nature roadmap was overwhelmingly positive, but one question which was also mentioned earlier in different panels when talking about sustainability is, okay, so what do we need to do as a company, individual company, what I need to do, how I need to start? And this is where WJI started developing Nature Action Playbook. This is really a recipe book, step-by-step guide, what each company can do to start tackling nature in its business. This is done in a way that we really try to provide different guidance for brands and bigger companies, and then for SMEs and smaller companies, trying to take into consideration different positions in the value chain, and all of this with the goal that with time, and that time is already now, most of the members, if not all, are starting to work or already have their company nature roadmap developed. This is sort of their internal commitment that they understand where they need to go and they know how to get there. So exactly, this is the slide that we were looking for, is literally the path of how we are moving the members and with them the sector through this education, which started with Nature Primer, and then the whole learning journey, sector level guidance through a Nature Roadmap, and then the Nature Action Playbook. Nature Action Playbook, as you can see, has two main sections, which are really starting steps, literally, from step 0, how company can start thinking about nature. We will go a little bit deeper into that later, but the idea is that following those steps, companies can develop their own nature strategy. And what is, I think, most tangible, especially for companies, is the ESG reporting platform, where all of these resources are one click away. So there is a question, have you started? If you haven't, there is a guidance document that you can download. There are examples, there are case studies, there are metrics which tell you how you can monitor on this.
And what is important also, and I think we talked about it this morning at the session that I thought was excellent, everything is about regulations are pressuring us. And what we've done is in the tool is that we've aligned everything with the existing regulations, but that we're also looking at what's coming so that we can continuously update this in the same dashboard, and also that people do not have to duplicate their data. Going into the practice, Alice, can you explain a little bit, because Italpreziosi has always been kind of pioneering, 3 steps ahead, but how have you used this work from WJI, and where are you in this journey on shaping your nature strategy?
Thank you, Iris. I don't know whether I can go through. I will go on and then back. For those who doesn't know Italpreziosi, just a small glimpse, we are a precious metal refinery. We are based in Italy, and we have been founded by Ivana Ciabatti in 1984. We are an LBMA Good Delivery refinery, RJC certified, and we are member of the Watch Jewellery Initiative. And we are also member of the Task Force for Natural Financial Disclosure since the last 2 years, because we thought that it was important to be directly involved in the processes to better understand in the table how we can take actions. And before starting, I wanted to say how it's important for a business to have an holistic approach. And this is very well defined also thanks to Watch Jewellery Initiative, which gives a lot of action plans and suggestion guidelines for the businesses, especially for SMEs. But having an holistic approach is crucial, because first you have to measure the impact, and to do so you have to have very clear what are the area of your impact. And we talk about sourcing, climate and biodiversity and nature, inclusiveness, but most of all accountability. And how do we measure the impact? And this is the step that I think is crucial discussing, is that you need to understand what are your stakeholders and start to approach each stakeholders on these topics. And to do so, it's not just about your supply chain. It's all about your employees, but also your board of directors, your CEO. Make them understand how nature is crucial within the strategy. And for us, it was crucial to make sure that our roadmap, which we are developing, of course, because the roadmap is a vision, and then you have to have a crucial action plan, which you can develop with time. It was crucial to make sure that climate and nature were intertwining, because most of all in these last years, we saw that many decarbonization plans were not considering enough nature, and sometimes decarbonization solutions were going actually against nature. And this is absurd if you think about it. So what we are trying to do is to make sure that through our decarbonization plan and transition plan, we can focus on both, making sure that nature is at the forefront together with climate, because nature can be one of the most powerful means we can use against climate change, if properly used. So it's not something you start and do one day. We start with reporting. In fact, usually for businesses that start, we always suggest to start reporting, collect data. As they were mentioned before, nature is not just biodiversity, it's water, it's All of the resources we do use every day in our operations, but not just directly, also indirectly. And that's where the headache usually comes. But I will go there very soon. We also took part to the European Business and Nature Summit, which took place 2 years ago in Milan. It was a great platform also, and this year we want to sign their commitment. And again, through TNFD and the European Business and Nature Summit and the Watch Jewellery Initiative, we start to put together many resources that we could implement throughout our organization. And the board of directors is one of the first parts you need to talk to, because the board needs to know, in order to take proper strategic decision, what to do, what is nature, why it's crucial to discuss about nature and climate.
Thank you. And I think what we also see is there's a lot of landscaping happening. Because if you think about our business from mining to retail, and depending where you manufacture in the world, if it's Sri Lanka or Thailand, or depending on the materials, if it's colored gemstones, etc., you will have to look at regions, and there's a lot of data already out there. And I think the beauty is working with the members, but also working with the experts. We are starting to realize, because of data, where are the biggest dependencies are for the industry. And that will be, I think, a unique opportunity for the industry to see, okay, where do we have the biggest negative impact, and how can we bring that to positive impact? But to do that, you need a methodology, and you need technology, and you continuously have to update it. And that's why, from the start, we also went for a technology solution. Johanna, I remember in the workshop that you said, oh my goodness, here is this nature thing. It's quite daunting. And then just a few weeks ago, I saw you, and I was really happy to see that you felt a lot more confident, and that you said, well, actually at GIA, you know, we're really doing this now. So please show us the way.
So indeed, the word nature and biodiversity can seem overwhelming, but so, you know, GIA, it's a very data-driven, science-driven organization, and we took a very data-driven, science-driven approach to sustainability. So we started first by doing a materiality matrix. Again, big word, but very simple concept. What matters to stakeholders, and how does climate change, biodiversity, nature, water, trust, how do they potentially impact financially your organization? And then it's a ranking exercise. And biodiversity for GIA is one of the top 15 topics, alongside trust, climate change, circularity, compliance. Biodiversity is there. So once you have identified nature, biodiversity as one of your top 15, then what do you do with that? So we took a very scientific, data-driven approach, thanks to the Watch Jewellery Initiative and thanks to Buga's team. We read the entire book and we did nature metrics. GIA also has a particularity to have several activities. We have 10 labs, 7 schools, and 5 research centers. And you mentioned industry, so it's not one industry, it's several industries. And those industries have different impact on nature. So in the nature roadmap, there is an SBTN, science-based target for nature metrics, that will give you indication based on your industry what kind of impact on nature you have. And so for GIA, it was very clear and surprising that water, even so we're school and lab, we're not a manufacturer, so water should be a little impact, but no, after following the matrix, water and water pollution have a big impact. So it kind of changed our approach to measuring our environmental impact. So now we measure carbon data, but also water, knowing that we have some labs in very water-stressed area. So even so, our water use is minor. We don't manufacture anything. We're talking people who wash their hands, clean some instruments. So it's really just domestic water use. But because this is in water-stressed area, and because water is important in those industries, then we need to have actions in there.
Thank you. Buga, you wanted to intervene, or?
Yeah, I wanted to, or this one, sort of to show how we really aimed to get there. Just in a little bit more detail. So basically, ladies here already explained how this worked in practice, but we really tried to provide systematized approach where it's not, oh, we forgot one step, we didn't do anything. This is a suggestion which way to follow, and it's everything that Alice and Johanna already mentioned. You need to have someone who is putting this on the agenda, in this case, these two ladies here. On the other hand, you need to know who you are talking to, map your stakeholders, educate them. You need to be aware what is driving you, all the regulations, and then you need to prepare your data. And I think in a way for companies starting this prepare your data part may look scary, but as Johanna said, you already probably have at least part of the data. So once the data is collected, you can really start looking at the materiality. And in this first year of work, we've really put emphasis on materiality assessment because this is what's going to define priorities. This is also what all the regulations are asking for and what reporting frameworks are asking for. We give specific guidance for direct operations and for supply chain because there is a different level of control you may have, and it's not expected that you will solve everything at once. As Johanna said, you start and then you see what's next, you see what's next. It's going to take a couple of years.
And what I also saw is, and we have companies of different sizes, from very small to very big brands, different maturity stages, is that there's one thing that always works, and I've seen it on Nature, is the first baseline is education. Education in smaller groups, in interactive groups, in one-on-ones, help desk support. But like I said, with concrete homework, it almost felt like going back to school. And I actually participated in many of the sessions because I want to learn more about nature. Because I think traditionally sustainability people have always very much looked at the social side and the governance side, but nature is almost, it's scientific. It's you know, you need biodiversity experts and climate experts. And we've seen the combination of those help desk sessions. It gives people confidence, and then you will still need experts. I don't think we expect from anyone to become, you know, biologists or nature experts, but you need to have a systematic approach. And that brings me to accountability and reporting. I don't know if you can, go. So we talked about it this morning. You can here go to the website and download the Nature Roadmap. I invite you to do so. But when we look at accountability and reporting, and I wanted to show that slide, this is actually, you know, this is huge. And maybe Buga, you can give us a little bit of a reflection on the fact that some people think, but you know, Iris, why are you putting nature at the heart of the WGI 2030? Well, Dr. Gaetano is in our board. He knows from the start, you know, this was really driven by Kering and Cartier, the co-founders, because we believe, you know, we need to be proactive. We need to bring companies fit for purpose. And working on this now is preparing you for already some of the legislation where you have to do it anyway. But if you're in scope 3 of a brand, and many of the suppliers will be, you will need to start collecting data. I don't know if you can give a little bit, very brief context of the legislation.
Yeah, so this is basically when we were starting to work, when WGI was starting to work on nature, this is what was ahead of us. Right, a lot of new regulation, both European ones with the CSRD and CSDDD, but then also the European deforestation regulation, which may not seem relevant the moment you hear about it, but again, it's gonna affect a lot of suppliers of the watch and jewelry sector. There are voluntary, so all the ones in dark are regulations. There are also a number of national regulations which came as implementation effort to implement the Global Biodiversity Framework, which was adopted in late 2022. But then also national regulations are adjusting to really meet the requirements of European ones, but also there is this one very interesting trend, and I think sometimes this can help companies feel more confident. We are getting aware from early on that climate and biodiversity were identified as a problem in 90s at this Rio conference. The thing is, for whatever reason, climate really took off. There was a lot of regulations, there was a lot of action happening on it. Nature and biodiversity somehow stayed lagging, but now that's a bad thing. But now we have advantage that climate sort of cleared the path. We see what's happening, we learn the good and the bad, and we can expect what's going to happen, and we can be prepared as companies and as a sector.
And maybe if we think about climate, many of the companies have SBTI, Science-Based Targets Initiative. We see that when brands or bigger companies ask data, it's their scope 3, it's their suppliers. It's challenging, and I think that's also something we did with the initiative. You know, we launched a climate navigator with help desk to really help companies understand how can I start my first baby steps on climate, at least that I have a pathway ahead, and that hopefully in 2 or 3 years I have my data correct, and so I can work with other companies. So this brings us also, you know, I think everybody hates reporting. You know, the word reporting, it's stressful for many people. I always say reporting is a tool. Reporting is a tool that can give a lot of value to your business if you do it right. It's a management system, but you first have to take certain steps. And I think what we've tried to do with ESG Book, which is one of the leading platforms in the world, is use actually technology that banks use to collect data for investors and to say, how can we use data, real-time data sets? Can we use benchmarking, et cetera, for companies and bring them on a journey of reporting? And this journey is really a journey of education, of action, and then accountability. And everything that we've been building, again, is referenced to the evolving regulations. And just like you have SBTI, Science-Based Targets Initiative, you have SBTN, so nature targets. And even though they're not clear yet, we're following it very closely and updating our work at a continuous basis. So if today you download our nature roadmap, well, probably in 3 months, there will be an update because we want to stay relevant for the industry. So talking about accountability and reporting, I think I would like each one of you briefly to say, you know, what business value does this give to you? And why are you investing so much on it? And I'll start with Johanna now.
I really like what you just said. Instead of thinking reporting, thinking about education and accountability. And I think that summarizes it. Why wouldn't you want to share your knowledge and be accountable? It also echoes a previous panel that happened a couple of hours ago about traceability. This conversation happening now is about gathering content that you'll be able after that to share, to build your story. This is about populating traceability solutions. This is about creating the value and anticipating regulation, but also this creates value. This protects the brands. And so I really encourage people to really paraphrase you, to switch from thinking reporting and instead think about accountability and education, because I think immediately you see the value of it.
Johanna, and you make a good point, and we talked about it this morning. We should not forget, being 24 years in the space, it was always about management systems, how a company is behaving with strong management systems. Now the regulations are going to product. It's going to be a huge switch for business. You're going to redevelop your business model because you will need to have product data. And if you want to have a wonderful marketing story and you want to put a claim out there, you better do it well, and you need assured data. And that's why it's important, because you will need to have data on human rights due diligence, on biodiversity impact, nature, climate, etc. And this is happening now. This is happening, and France is taking a lead on that. So, Alice, I've followed your work for many years. Also, why is it important? I think we all know, but for your company specifically, how has it helped you advance?
Absolutely. First of all, I would like to comment on this amazing job that the Watch Jewellery Initiative did, because it's digitalization of a process that usually is an headache, making it simple, even for, and understandable even for smaller companies, which is the main aspect of the initiative, to support the engagement of also small and medium companies. And let's say that reporting, as I said before, is one of the first paths, because without that, you don't know where you are. And I would like to also say that, as you were saying before, it's about understanding what are the risks, the impacts, but also take the opportunities, because it's not just about having issues, it's also about having opportunities for the business. And I would like to go back 1 second, because you mentioned the importance of education, and that has been a crucial part for us. In fact, we try to make sure that, because we are a precious metal refinery, we are in the middle of the supply chain between the downstream and the upstream. So both of the sides, education is crucial, because you have to make sure that your clients understand what you're doing, but also your suppliers understand what they have to do in order to be aligned with what the market expectations are. And there's one thing that all of us is doing, the KYC, know your customer. And we created this concept about making sure that this know your customer is not just a boring moment of compliance, but it becomes something proactive, where you know who you have in front, but you know also what are the gaps that they have, and so you know how to help them. So we create this concept of empowering your counterpart, and to do so, we created an educational platform in 2019 for businesses, where we put together all the information that were crucial for us on sustainability, compliance, responsible sourcing, and now nature and climate change is one of the main pages. And as a small spoiler, what we realize is that most of the projects and educations are focused on small and medium companies, but there's a part of the mining industry which is related to small communities and individuals, and usually these are those communities that are left behind, because they do not have access to the platform, the hubs, the conferences, everything that usually businesses have. So we are working on a new project, which is about an app, and I hope in the next month we will be releasing it. But the main aspect here is that culture is power. Without culture, without knowledge, people are afraid that they don't know what to do. If you educate and support, you can actually change the industry in better. And you can do it thanks also to association like the Watch Jewellery Initiative.
But we also can't do it alone. And I think one thing is we have our companies go through a program called 120 Days of Nature. So actually 4 months, an intensive program where we saw companies of all sizes join. And the results are now being collected in the next coming 5 weeks. And we'll be presenting the outcome in our stakeholder report in April at Watches and Wonders, where we're also going to showcase where we saw some of the really great examples already of more advanced companies, but also where we're going to talk about the starter journey to really encourage others to do so. And also allow me to, to thank any organization in our industry that works on the topic of sustainability. And in particularly, I would like to thank Dr. Gaetano Cavalieri, because if he would not bring us all together here, we would never move the needle together. So for me, my wish is that in 2025, that we're going to be a much more united front, not reinvent the wheel, not duplicate, and also look at, what are the best solutions out there, and then scale them. I think it would be great to have some maybe questions from the audience, and maybe if they want to ask some concrete questions to our expert, because I'm not a nature expert, I'm the enabler. So I would love to see if there are some questions from the audience.
Thank you. My name is Esther Lichthart. I am a writer for a jewelry blog that's my own. And so I've been listening, and I've heard about the water, which is sustainability, and you think already about water. But when I think about biodiversity, I think fauna and flora, and I haven't heard anything about that. So if I would like to talk more about it and engage the audience with that, how can I do that, and what can I tell about flora and fauna?
I'm going to take this one. Thank you. So as we said, it's First, obviously, my mind runs to mining, and obviously, I'm gonna give an example of mining, but I also want to prepare the ground. It's not the only thing. So mining has a lot of impacts on biodiversity. The problem is today we've seen a amazing presentation from the beers where they showed what is the surface of land that is being mined, and that guide us to understanding that it's not so much. But we need to keep in mind one aspect of it's nature playing with us. Quite often what we need to mine is in areas which are amazing, and those are areas of highest biodiversity value. This can be partially because traditionally we've already mined, for example, in Europe, right? But also we are aware that because of geology and how nature works, a lot of precious metals, or a lot of stones, a lot of, let's say, basic metals are mined in tropical, subtropical areas. Those are areas which are also not heavily populated or developed, which means mines open fronts in otherwise pristine natural areas. Mining sectors has probably for that been one of the first sectors to start actually looking at their environmental impacts. Also because the financing institutions understood that that's a problem and that's a risk and that's something they need to be aware of. The mining sector for long has had standards on how to assess biodiversity, how to assess their impacts, how to mitigate them, to minimize them whenever possible, and how to offset those impacts which cannot be done. So this is being done, but still, whenever we need a new mine open, it's quite likely it's going to be in a natural, pristine areas. One of the challenges for this particular sector is, for example, the artisanal and small-scale mining, and this is where I think it's a topic close to a lot of our hearts. It's quite important for biodiversity, but it's super important for people because it also includes this social layer, and this is something that we always try to emphasize, that nature is not completely new, unknown thing that we need to now try to understand. It basically underlies everything that companies are already doing within sustainability or otherwise. Because if we are looking at the ASM communities in Madagascar or whatever, you name it, we cannot come in. I'm a biologist, I'm very passionate about what I do, but I don't feel I could possibly come there to Ilakaka people and the communities around and say, why are you cutting trees? You cannot do that, go live. This is their livelihood. What we need to think about is what they need, how their livelihood can be improved, how they can be educated. That is basically the starting point and end point of anything we want to do in sustainability and for nature. Educate, we need to empower them, we need to improve their way of working, the way they live, and then that's going to result in improved nature. They will also be aware, they will have the voice to say, we need to take care of the water, we cannot do this here, we should do it this way, and that's eventually going to bring a link to nature. So simply because I said I'm going to talk not just about mining, a good example is leather industry, especially exotic leather industry, where there was always traditionally, before we, as a society, we started taking care of these things, a lot of species were almost driven to extinction because we liked the leather, their skins, right? Since species have been put on red lists, CITES lists, or whatever was the case, this started to be more regulated, and what happened is that for certain species we started growing them, raising them in farms, right? The fact that they can now be bought from the farms means they are not hunted in the wild, and also a lot of the farms, what they do is if they manage to breed the species in captivity, they return eggs or animals also. So we have actually examples of species, reptilian species, which have started to recover since we started farming them, and this is also driven by this industry. So I want to flag that we are not only talking about negative impacts. This industry also has a positive impact on nature, but I also think we need to sort of map those things, and we need to be aware of those when we talk about them.
Yeah, Esther, and if I may step in on artisanal scale mining, that's very close to my heart. As you know, nature and climate is not a neutral crisis, it's a gender crisis. Women are mostly affected. If we then think about nature, for example, mercury and water, it's really critical. So again, that element of education, companies understanding if they're investing in certain regions or sourcing from certain regions, what are the issues? How critical is education? How critical are topics like wages, living wages, formalizing, having a systematic approach to development? And that's why we cannot disconnect those topics. And I think it was a fantastic vision from Kering and Cartier to say, we're going to look at really the just transition. Because you could be thinking you have a positive impact in one direction, and like Johanna said, it could be very negative in another. Thank you for the really good question, Esther. Another question?
Can I add one point on that? I want also to step in saying that there are many standards. For example, as a refiner, we are at BMA Good Delivery, and when we do have to do the compliance, we have zero tolerance if there's World Heritage areas or protected areas. So usually, especially, we need to clear that it's not that unless it is illegal, it's very difficult to go in a protected area and mining, actually, depending on the country you're talking about. And we also need to clear that, as she was mentioning, mining is one of those few sectors that when you open a mine, you have to have a closure plan, which means that you have to already have a plan for reforestation, depending on the kind of mining you do. So actually, in comparison to many other sectors, the mining one is the one that if you ask about biodiversity or nature, they know how to answer about it. And they can do amazing work, especially when it's about reforestation. So we should not always watch unilaterally. We always have to watch holistically on the social impact, but also on the sector, because usually we talk generally and we don't go deep. Indeed, the mining is not just negative. And as for ASM, maybe that's the most critical. We have been part of the Planet Gold, which is a multi-stakeholder project that had the aim with the United Nations, the OECD, and private sector, with the aim of eliminating mercury from ASM. And it was developed before in 8 countries and then in 23 countries in the world. And it worked quite well, and education was at the forefront, but there's lots of work to be done on that.
Yeah, thank you. Johanna, you wanted to step in here.
Yeah, because I think also your question brings a very good example of how do you measure bad impact and how do you measure good impact. And you said, I haven't heard us talk about diversity in fauna and flora. That's a very good point. And let's go back to what you said and what you said about a systemic approach. What we're trying to achieve is understanding in a systematic, organized, structured way, understanding impact on nature. And so we deep dive, we don't stay at the fauna and flora, we deep dive into the water quality, the soil quality, toxicology, number of species. So a life cycle analysis or the science-based target for nature, they have those indicators. And we go into those indicators and also, so I didn't choose, oh, I'm gonna do water or she's going to do soil. No. We followed a very structured approach because otherwise it's too easy to pick where you're good and to not focus on where you have an impact. So we did the contrary. We didn't choose, we let the methodology choose for us, one. And second, talking about biodiversity, it's over, and you're the expert, I'm not. It's decades, if not 50s, 60 years. So how do you measure that? You can't really measure biodiversity in a year and report on it. But what you can do is measure your impact every single year. That you can do.
And if I may add to what you just said, if what would sort of raise the flag, you said that company, like if you are reporting, if you are measuring, then you don't get to choose what you will consider important and what you're gonna work on. The thing is, what we've seen, especially working with the WGI members, so we have workshops every 6 months, which means we meet all of the members in the same room discussing. And I can say personally, what was one of the highlights of 2024 for me is that in March, I was working with one of the subgroups of companies which were bigger brands, and we were discussing where they are along this journey, how they move forward. And after 10 to 15 minutes, I actually got a question, can we go back that you tell us what actually you mean that nature is? And that took me back a bit. I got, and then obviously I have 20 years of training in biodiversity, and these people have 20 years of training in very different things. So we started going back, and this explained a lot of surprises that I had in this first period, because as Johanna said, companies started doing materiality. That is essential. You cannot tackle everything. You need to choose priorities, and priorities are chosen based on what is material for your company, for your business. And a lot of companies said, nature is not material for us. That doesn't have anything to do with what we are doing. It's not relevant for us. And my answer was always, okay, it's perfectly possible, but can you explain me how you got there? And almost always the answer was, well, we talked with our stakeholders. But then the next question was like, can you tell us what actually nature is? Which means we were assessing if nature is important for our business, but we were not really sure what nature is. And past 6 months after summer holidays and deep preparing for the next workshop, and I'm like, okay, let's see how far we got. And I'm sitting in a room with probably 30 companies, both big brands, but also midstream suppliers, and out of the blue, they are talking about actions that they're doing. They're talking where they are along this playbook that we've done. Some of them have nature roadmaps and want to discuss them with their peers to see, is that how you've done it, or how did you do it? We've had companies who already said, look, we are working on our impact. This is difficult. We need to engage with stakeholders, suppliers. That's going to take forever. So we decided already to start doing action. What are you doing? Should we get together to do? So I was astonished that in 6 months, companies really moved and started learning and achieving a lot. So
yeah,
encouraging.
And I'd like to add one thing. We would have never been able to advance so quickly if some of the most beautiful brands in the world would have not shared, because they had been working on this for 5 to 10 years, because they had a vision already 10 years ago that nature is very relevant to them as a core strategic priority before regulations came in. And I think that's been the beauty, I think, of the initiative, then that knowledge that is within antitrust, like I said, within antitrust context, is being shared. And I think we should all be very grateful for it, because if we would put all that knowledge in a box, it would not come to the industry. And that's also the philosophy of WGI 2030. Whatever we're shaping and building, we are first testing in our membership. We're doing always multi-stakeholder consultations, so we are not at any time bringing something to the industry that has not gone through an extensive consultation. We'll continue to do so. We want to be very critical, and then we can look at how can we scale. And I think that's where I applaud you, Dr. Gaetano Cavalier, because scalability will be possible if everyone in the industry starts to acknowledge that there's a pathway for everyone. Everyone can take steps, and only together we can protect our industry. So I think it's a huge opportunity for us to step up and also lead the way. And maybe I was very happy just before this conversation that Buga said, well, you know, Iris, your model could probably be replicated with other industries who are starting at nature, because you've gone so deep the past 2 years in nature. And I think that's what we want. We want to sit at the table with other industries, learn from them, bring ours together, and showcase also the good we do. Because we do a lot of good. We should not, you know, we should acknowledge that, but we need to become better. Any other questions?
Hi, my name is Galina. I work for the French online magazine, Like a Beautiful Jewel. First of all, congratulations for your approach and accomplishment. We feel like it's a little bit easier for big companies to implement such approach with all the reporting system and data that you show. So would it be possible to have an idea of the cost for a company to set up all this approach with reporting system and data collection? How do you motivate the companies, your suppliers in the current economic context, and specifically the small companies? Is the threat of regulations the only way to do so?
So maybe let me give a little bit of context, and then I'm going to give the floor to our expert in this topic. I think, first of all, let's acknowledge that for an SME, any legislation implementation will always be more challenging because they will not have big lawyers in the room to protect them or to help them or give them all those information. So I think that's where the role is of the initiative. What we're building, we are sharing with the wider industry, but we're sharing with smaller members. So within the initiative, I'm very proud, we have very small members, and they're beautiful members. And for them, it's a minimum contribution of, 500 Swiss francs a year, while the bigger brands are investing and funding these projects. 1. 2, they're getting help desk support. But let's be very clear, they do have to do their homework. So if they want help desk support from the experts, we want all the questions in advance. And why is it? It's just being pragmatic. If we have 20 the same questions, we know this is a critical point, this is very difficult, we need to invest more resources in it. So there's a methodology, like I said, it's like going back to school. So we believe we can really help advance. And I think where it will really be optimizing resources is when we, together with CIBJO and others, sit together and say, okay, on these baseline criteria, this is the pathway, and we're going to give so much time for the SMEs. What we'll also see is, and I see it, that big brands are investing into their suppliers' capacity because they will need the data from their suppliers. But then going back to, I think, the more practical approach that you know from other industries, maybe you can give some guidance.
Well, I think it would be good to ask Johanna because they just started this journey and she can tell you how much it costs because I'm on the other side.
But GI is big, yeah? GI is not small.
But she started the journey now and then I can give our experience from...
But so honestly, if we're talking about the nature exercise, I went online. I'm a member, so I have access to that. But so membership cost based on revenue, so smaller if you're a small company. I clicked on the document, I read the document, just me. I did the analysis, I was able to do it. I'm also an expert in sustainability, but I was able to do it. And then I emailed Buga, and I was like, did I do it right? And she was like, you did. So I think my point is, when there is a will, there is a way. And I'm French, so I could find the same. But it's not daunting at all, at all. Maybe, as you mentioned, 5 years ago, no tool, completely different conversation. But today, there is a tool for every single part of your sustainability journey. Human rights due diligence, nature roadmap, climate change measurement. They are public, free online tool. So the cost is not the barrier yet. It's more the will and somebody in a company willing to do a deep dive.
And if I may step in, I think today often companies start because of a commercial agreement or because they are concerned about regulations, but it's actually, okay, I have to do it. We have to come from I have to do it, I want to do it because it's the right thing to do and it's going to give me business resilience. But I do agree that I think we as an industry need to educate, and that see that our companies comply. You know, we need to respect the law, let's be very clear, but actually that it starts to become like natural breeding. And that will take time. I mean, Dr. Gaetano sits there. I mean, 30 years ago, we were sitting at the table, and then Gaetano was already, you know, for a couple of decades probably leading the way for the industry. I've seen the industry evolve the past 25 years too, but now we'll have to go faster and deeper. Definitely.
If I may add to it, so It's as Johanna says, we have tools. So especially this first step, which we've currently supported the WJI members on, as the materiality and checking if you actually need to work on this, doesn't cost money. And a lot of this can be a single person. And in a way, for me, it's always difficult to say if it's going to be harder or not for SMEs, because they are smaller. It's easier to get to your boss and say, look, we really need to do it, and the boss will say, sure. In bigger companies, there's a lot of bosses that need to say sure for you to actually start moving, and that takes time, and that in the end costs money. And the other thing is companies, smaller companies often, it's a two-side, could possibly have better relationship with their suppliers, because it's smaller, you are more personal touch, but on the other hand, also companies say we are sourcing so little that we don't have leverage. That's true. But I can tell you, I work with suppliers, and they said, yeah, we normally only answer and give data to the big companies, but like in the last year, we got 20 little companies ask us the same thing. So now we also have to start answering them. So it's not about whether you personally have leverage, it's about the sector. And then the final point is this education and working through it together. Following steps after you do the materiality, and if it turns out that you actually need to do deeper dive on, I don't know, gold from wherever you're sourcing it, that costs money. And that cannot be done online with a free tool by one person. In a way also, because there is not enough data still within the industry being shared. But as I said earlier, we are already seeing companies willing to share. As Iris mentioned, we are putting in the room brands who are working on it, like Italpreziosi already for years, midstream players who are working on it. We have suppliers and mines who are working on it. We are putting them together with the small companies, SMEs from any part of the value chain, and saying, okay, how did you do it? Should we just, all of us who are doing the same commodity in the same part of the world, should we sit together? Maybe we can put resources together and assess. Especially with ASM, you will never know, maybe once, if your sapphires come from this village or this river or that river. But if we are all sourcing sapphires from Madagascar, we can just sit together and say, okay, between us, we source this much. We are probably sourcing from here. What can we do there? It doesn't matter if I source whatever number of carats and you source that much. It's coming to the collaborative action, and where you are not just addressing directly what is yours and say, I'm only going to do the minimum I need to compensate. We're going to work together, and this is where SMEs can benefit a lot.
Yeah, and I see the future is going to be all about landscaping. So we talk about artificial intelligence that can do quite forecasting on certain regions in the world. If you look at where you are, water, land, all of these things, and if we go to product passports, it means is you'll need to have the data, and you'll need to go back to the source, chain of custody to origin. So you will need to know where everything is coming from, and it's going to be such a huge shift. I think the next 10 years, we have no idea what this is going to mean on your business model and how you're going to do your due diligence and taking into consideration nature as a core. Any other questions?
Can I answer to this? Thank you. I would like to normalize one aspect, not talking about cost, but investment. You're not just talking about a cost, it's just talking about an investment that a company needs to do to be resilient in the future business. So I would like to normalize, not talking about cost, but investment. And invest, especially for SMEs, invest in internal resources. Form internal resources that can understand and then keep on going through this path, but start internally, maybe with external stakeholders, but invest internally.
And the pathway of sustainability, people is often lonely, and that's why it's good to be in a collective. Any other final questions? Because I'm very conscious of time. We have 2 more minutes. Final question. Then I still wish you a wonderful, successful fair here in Vicenza, and we thank you very much for your attention. And please give my panelists a fantastic applause, because these are 3 amazing women leaders.
And thank you, and thank you.
If I may, there's an event on B Corp at the Educational Hub that we are organizing for those who are interested. Sorry.
And also thank to Iris for bringing us together, for driving industry, not just through WJI, but as you said, for decades already. So thank you.